Hello friends, my name is Michelle Fondin and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm an author and speaker, and welcome back to this series on twin flames and the twin flame connection. This message comes to the divine feminines as an urgent message. It's so urgent, in fact, that I just came home from work, literally after a really long day at work, and I quickly changed my clothes and I said, I need to get this message out to the divine feminines. Now, here is why. The reason is we are March. We're about the second week in March. So I believe today's March 10th. Yes, I'm a little bit, we just sprung forward. I guess that's the proper tense. We sprung or sprang forward. And so I'm a little bit disoriented as far as the time change. Plus I'm coming back from Florida to California. So I am like all jet lagged all over. But this message is extremely important to divine feminines about letting go of ego. Now here is why I'm giving you this message today. I'm giving this message because this morning, before I left for work, I checked my messages and there was a message from my YouTube channel on the video on divine masculine about treating the divine masculine in a certain way. Now, I'm not singling out this person that left the comment. In fact, it was a very, very good comment with a very valid point, and that's why I wanted to do the video. Because weeks ago, my sister, who's also a divine feminine like me, and in current separation with her divine masculine, which you know in spirit, you guys are never, ever, ever separate. It's just in physical body or in 3D, as they call it. In 3D, that there is a sense of separation. But the good news is many twin flame couples now in March of 2019 are starting to come together in record numbers. And there is a second surge that's going to happen in July of 2019. So that's why this message is so incredibly urgent, because I think a lot of the divine feminines out there, they still don't understand the nature of this union, the nature of this relationship. And a few weeks back, it might have been like right after Christmas time, around January, my sister came to me because she had been seeing on some forums on twin flames about the reactions of the divine feminine in regards to the divine masculine in this separation and the way that they have been treated through the separation. And notably, it's about the divine masculine, like ignoring the divine feminine, ignoring texts, ignoring phone calls, not connecting, maybe going off and being in a relationship with a karmic connection or a soulmate connection, and all of these things that cause the separation or just the twin flame divine masculine running away from the divine feminine. And the comments were along the lines of, well, I'm not going to text him until he texts me, or I'm not going to call him until he calls me, or when he calls me, I'm going to do A, B, C, or D. And so the commentary was on, well, the divine masculine has displayed this behavior, has displayed a behavior of, I'm going to ignore you, even though we have this connection, I know we have this connection, I'm going to ignore you. And that has been the experience for many of you. It's been the experience for many of the divine feminines out there. But now the tides are turning as the divine masculine is awakening to this new spiritual level. And as the divine masculine is awakening to the new spiritual level, they're coming to a greater understanding of this divine connection and of the essence of unconditional love. So here is where you are going to get yourself in a really sticky situation if you are caught up in ego as the divine feminine. So in other relationships, so I explain this a little bit in my videos for the divine masculine, but in other relationships, which the other relationships could be a karmic connection or they could be a soulmate connection. So karmic connection is you have something great to learn. You guys have karma to work out, and it could last one day or it could last 10 years. And then a soulmate connection usually has more of the qualities of a twin flame connection, where you really feel this symbiosis or this real connection on a spiritual level to the other person. It doesn't have to be a lover, but it can be. In those connections, in the karmic connection or the soulmate connection, we tend to treat the relationship on a very human level. So even though in a soulmate connection there might be this spiritual connection, we tend to treat it on a more ego-based level, if you will. So the ego-based level is a more societal acceptance as how relationships should go. And we've been taught this by our parents, we've been taught this by society, we've been taught this by parents, we've been taught this by books. And so it's a very mechanical, ego-based give and take. I won't give unless if you give. And if you give to me, then I give to you. If you do A, then I do B. We use the relationship in a very manipulative way, even though sometimes it's on a very subconscious level or unconscious level. But it's usually about the ego getting what it wants. And if the ego gets what it wants, then in return, you love that person. You show loving affection. And so we delineate boundaries, which are healthy. It's healthy to delineate boundaries. It's necessary to delineate boundaries. And it's really healthy to say, I don't like being treated this way. This is not a way in which I prefer to be treated. Totally fine. But what these divine feminines were talking more about was, this behavior is unacceptable, it's horrible, it's terrible, ignoring me is not good. And so when they come back, I'm gonna give them a piece of my mind. I'm gonna let them know, like, all of that stuff is unacceptable. The reason why that does not work in a twin flame connection is because the level at which you need to approach the relationship is at a different level. It's not an ego-based level. It's not an earthly level. It's more of a spiritual, unconditionally loving level. There are two types of people in this world as far as our journey and our experiences in this earthly plane. So there are two types. There are the type of people who are very ego-based and ego-driven, meaning that they are kind of building from the ground upward, or from the root chakra, if you will, on upward, meaning that the lessons that they're learning is about fear, trust versus mistrust, the lessons of survival, the lessons of survival of the fittest in society, so to speak, where the mob, the collective is really important to them. It doesn't make it wrong. I am just explaining that a lot of these lessons come really hard because a lot of it's based on what other people are doing, how other people are performing, what other people think of me. And so those types of lessons usually come with a more earthbound relationship. All of these relationships are very earthbound, and it's kind of like egos battling one another for dominance, if you will. And then there's a second type of person who kind of comes from the ethers, comes from the spiritual world or the heavens, and has to come down to earth and learn how to live on earth, even though they're very spiritually connected. That relationship is really hard. It's really hard to come from a more spiritual level and live an earth-based life. And so the twin flame connection is a very spiritual connection. And so your twin flame soul is a very spiritual soul. And so you and your twin flame are coming from the heavens down, trying to create a life on this earth with earthly rules, if you will. And so if you try to take the more earthbound rules and apply it to a spiritual relationship, it's going to blow up in your face. It's just not going to work. And I'll explain why. Before I explain, I'm going to give you a lesson in a parable from the Bible that you may or may not have heard based on your religious and cultural upbringing, but it's a very popular parable or story in the New Testament, in the Bible, that Jesus tells. And Jesus tells this story to show what unconditional love is, because he's trying to demonstrate the love of God the Father. And so the story goes that a very, very wealthy man has two sons. This very, very, very wealthy man who has two sons has a great son who obeys every single rule of the father, who works and toils in the earth and works in the fields every day. And he works with the servants, and he's a hardworking man. The other son is a lazy man. He doesn't like to work. He doesn't like to toil. He likes to party with his friends. One day, the second son, who likes to party, went to his father and said, "Father, give me my inheritance now. I know you're not dead. Give me my inheritance. So basically what he was saying to the father was, you're as good as dead to me. Just give me my money. I want it now. So that son takes his money. The father does give him his half of the inheritance, takes his money, goes off, parties, women, prostitutes, drugs, alcohol, everything. And all of a sudden, he finds himself destitute. He's poor, he's broken, he has no home, no money, no nothing. So after months have gone by, he said to himself, even the pigs in my father's farm eat better than I eat. I will go back to my father and I will say, please allow me to work in your fields and I will eat the scraps after the pigs have finished eating in their troughs. He was ready to like break himself down and make himself humble and say, I will be willing to work and toil in your fields, Father, if you will just take me back to eat the scraps after the pigs have eaten. The father, who was missing his son desperately, saw his son coming from the distance, and he called his top servant and he said, servant, kill the fattened calf, for my son has returned. And he runs into the field to go embrace his son, and he hugs him and he kisses him and he says, welcome back. And the son says, Father, I'm not worthy. I spent all your money on prostitutes and drugs and alcohol. I am not worthy. If you will just take me back, I will work in your fields and I can eat in the troughs of the pigs after the pigs have eaten. And his father says, ridiculous. You come, you will be at the head of my table. I have slaughtered the fattened calf, and you are my son. Rejoice, for my son has returned. Meanwhile, the older son, who was always faithful to his father, who worked and toiled every single day, said, that is not fair. Look what I've done. I've treated you well. I've worked every day. This son pretends you're dead and squanders your money, and you're welcoming him back into your home like a king? And his father said, son, you are my faithful child. You are my faithful son. But my son was dead and now he is alive. I rejoice because I love him. He is my son. There's no difference between you and him and my love that I have. Jesus tells this story as unconditional love. That is Christ consciousness. That is the level of unconditional love that you as a divine feminine must display for your divine masculine. It's not about letting the divine masculine step all over you. That's not what this relationship is about. You must remember that your twin, your soul lives inside of his body. His soul lives inside of your body. There is no way, there's absolutely no way that this man, this divine masculine, or if it's a woman who is embodying the divine masculine energy, there is no way that this person could possibly be operating from an ego-based level like in the first relationship that I talked to you about, because they are 100% operating from the spiritual level. Now, the behavior that they've displayed is because they have ego stuff that they need to work out and work through, just as you do. So while they are in separation with you, they're working out all their ego stuff. And when you are in separation, you're working out through all of your ego stuff. But being the receptivity, being the divine feminine, you are a bowl of receptivity, meaning like you are the goddess, you are the receptive energy, you are the receiving energy. And so as the receiving energy, you need to hold that space, kind of like with open arms, like the father from the story of the prodigal son. You hold that space with open arms, and when your lover comes back to you and he comes with his head bowed in shame and guilt and saying, I've done you wrong, your role is to open your arms and say, I've slaughtered the fattened calf. You will be at the head of my table. You are the king in my life. You were lost and now you're found. You were dead and now you are alive. Like, I love you no matter what. And that is the space that we as divine feminines need to hold for our divine masculine. And it sounds like death for the ego, right? The ego's like, what? That makes absolutely no sense. What about me? Like, what about my rights? What about my boundaries? What about everything in it for me? Like, I was unfairly treated. I was mistreated. The ego in this connection has no place. As much as I personally would like to have the ego have a place, it really doesn't have a place. And believe me, I suffer inside as much as you guys have suffered. I suffer in separation from my divine masculine as much as you guys suffer from separation from your divine masculine. But I'm willing to hold that place of love for him so that when he does return, that I can open my arms to him and say, I know, I know, I know. And you have to remember that your divine masculine is in separation from you because he's in such pain. And the pain that he endures is too unbearable to handle. It's just too much. It's too painful. It's too intense for him to handle right now. Or, like I said, replace the pronouns if you need to. It's too intense to handle. And that's why he has kept himself from you, is because that pain is just too incredibly intense and he can't endure the pain. He can't look into your eyes and feel like a man. So he has severed himself from you and separated himself from you until he has worked through this pain. And when he's worked through the pain, then he'll be ready to come back to you. And he'll be ready to become in union with you and be open and be honest and be upfront. And you need to hold that space for him. If he feels shamed more than he already feels himself, if he feels guilt more than he already feels for right now from you, it's like he's double dipping into that. And your role is not to do that. Your role is not to make him feel like less than the divine masculine must feel in his empowerment, in his feeling of power. The other thing is that the divine feminine is always a few steps ahead of the divine masculine. So just know that. Know that in your spiritual journey and in your spiritual growth, you are always a few steps ahead of the divine masculine. So it's even more important that you hold that loving space. Because you guys are connected at the soul and because your souls are one, your divine masculine is going to feel if you're not holding that loving space for him. And if you're not holding that loving space, he's not going to come back to you as soon as you would hope, because he's going to be afraid. He's going to be afraid of the backlash. He's going to be afraid of you setting up rules and regulations and parameters and boundaries against him. Because when he comes to the realization that you are his soul and vice versa, when he comes to that realization, he will treat you with nothing but respect, nothing but honor, nothing but admiration, nothing but pure humility and reverence for your soul and reverence for you as a person. And he will literally like worship at your feet, if you will. And I say that metaphorically. I'm not saying he will actually worship you at your feet, but it's a metaphoric image of how he will feel as he develops in his spiritual being and he opens up to that divine essence within him and realize that it's the same divine essence within you. So please, divine feminines, please stay out of your ego. Don't look to punish him. Don't look to put up rules and regulations. That worked for other relationships. It does not work in this one. It really doesn't, because if you do things like put rules against text messaging and say like, I won't text this if you don't text this, or, you know, if you do this, I'll do this. If you start to do that, that's called manipulation. And manipulation is always an effort of the ego. And manipulation is not unconditional love. Unconditional love is you can come and go freely as you choose. I open my arms either way. I open my arms for you to come and I open my arms for you to leave. And it is all equal because I love you in equal measure no matter what happens. So just go back to that story of the prodigal son, where that father had his arms open whether or not his son was coming or going. His arms were equally open. And that is divine love. I mean, that's how God loves you. God loves you whether you choose to be in a relationship with him or whether you don't choose to be in a relationship with him. He opens his arms to you in good and he opens his arms to you in rejection. And that is the essence of the twin flame connection. The twin flame connection, as I mentioned in the Divine Masculine videos, is about unconditional love. Love with no conditions. And you are equipped to experience unconditional love. You are equipped to give unconditional love. You are equipped to receive unconditional love because you are in this twin flame journey. And if you weren't equipped for it, you wouldn't be on this journey. If that was not you, you wouldn't be here. So thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for subscribing to my channel below. Share this video with friends, family, and other twin flames. And please support me on Patreon. This channel is self-sustaining. Like, YouTube does not pay out very much. It's like pennies, really. So I do buy camera equipment, lighting equipment, computer equipment. It takes time and effort to make these videos, edit these videos, have the proper equipment to do so. So www.patreon.com/Michelle S. Fondin, and I will see you in the next video.